Can a person that has just broken their neck or their back have hope for their future? They most certainly can. And in today's Really Good Tips, Your Mind Matters, Ted Feldbrugge talks about how you can engage the power of your mind and perhaps come to the realization that things might work out.
I had the unfortunate experience of breaking my neck about 10 years ago now, and really was a great opportunity to apply my learnings to my own life situation, and it really was, to be perfectly honest, just I was so fortunate. It was a life-changing experience for me to be able to do that. I wouldn't change it if I could. I had my accident, it was on Anzac Day 2009, I remember it clearly. Yeah, Steph and I, we used to live in Sumner at the time, and we used to bike past Burwood Hospital and think to ourselves, man, imagine being in a situation like that. And one day it actually did happen to me, got cut off at a roundabout, hit the brakes too hard as a car clipped me, and went over the handlebars and landed on my head and broke my neck, fractured C2, 3 and 4. I spent about 4.5 months there in Burwood Spinal Unit, and learnt lots about many things, including lots about myself while I was there. Spent a long time in a wheelchair, and probably about a year or so. I remember lying in the trauma unit just almost to the moment, 24 hours later. I was completely immobile. I couldn't move anything. I couldn't dress myself or feed myself, just 100% dependent. I do remember thinking to myself, yep, this is grim, life is going to be different, but it doesn't mean it has to be worse. And that was just a turning point for me, really, where I sort of looked forward thinking, one way or other we'll make this work. I don't know if I'm going to ever walk again or what I'll be able to do again, but I'll just make this work. A lot of the learnings that I got through the experience of going through the spinal unit, they're not things that you learn in books or formally through academia. They're life teachings that I would have to say in all honesty that if I could go back and change it I wouldn't, because the learnings are just so deep and so significant that you just can't really learn many of these things unless you actually experience a massive adversity like that. Adopting a position of hope when you face a massive challenge, and I'm still talking, I mean, I've recovered well now, but I'm still talking about when I couldn't feel anything and couldn't move anything. Your mind goes berserk, really, with all kinds of thoughts that really are not very helpful. Now, having the ability in real time to just stop and catch that thinking and change it. And I use just the toolkit I use for that is just a simple, just SOS, and SOS just stands for just stop, observe and shift. And a lot of the thinking that occurs in our minds when we face these situations really just isn't helpful, and to be able to stop and dispute in real time just how inaccurate and even pessimistic, if you want to use that term, just how unhelpful these things are. So adopting a position of hope, as I said, it just opens up just a world of all sorts of possibilities that even if you can't recover, say, physical function, you can still live a good life. It just might be different. Just staying open to the idea that things might work out. Now that's easy to say, but to stay open, to have open-mindedness when adversity strikes is, it's not an easy thing to do, but you can train yourself to do it. So staying open to the idea things may work out and then just trying as if they will. So that when you try, you just maximise your chances of them working out. And so when they do work out or work better, it may not be what you expected, but they still work out to be better. And so that's connected to effort. The level of effort that people invest is connected to what they expect. And it's a really important concept that we can just manipulate our expectations into a more positive place, adopting a position of optimism, for instance, then we just greatly increase our chances that the outcomes will be positive for us. We hear a lot of talk these days about resilience, and resilience is the ability to experience an adversity but bounce back to the position you were in originally. And I prefer to use a term which you don't hear used very much these days, but it's a term called anti-fragility, and it's only used because we have no word in the English language which is the opposite of fragile. But the concept behind it is that maybe there are things that we can do to not just bounce back to where we were, but to actually grow as a result of the experience that we've had and end up in a position that was better than the original position we were in. When we face bigger challenges, there's a series of steps that you can follow. It's called A, B, C, D, E. And A just stands for adversity. What is the adversity? And I would encourage people to even write that down. What is it? Describe it. And B is beliefs. What are my beliefs about this adversity? I'll never walk again, or I won't be able to function, I won't be able to work. What are my beliefs? And you'll probably find that most of those beliefs are actually wildly inaccurate. They're just opinions. They're not real. They're just opinions. C is consequences. What are the consequences to me if I maintain a belief system that I'll never walk again? Probably to me, which is a position of pessimism, probably to me that means I'll give up, which is a position of helplessness and hopelessness at the same time. And so what are the consequences to me if I start believing that I'll never walk again? Then I'll probably stop trying. And the D is really important as well, because when we learn to recognise those thoughts that are particularly unhelpful for us, an important part of this cycle or this process is to dispute that thinking. To challenge it. Is it actually real, or is it just an opinion? Is it emotional brain going on here? Is it rational brain? How accurate really is it? And the E at the end of it is just execution. What are you going to do as a result of thinking through this? So it's a toolkit that I go to pretty much on a daily basis. I use those tools all the time. And I wouldn't have much credibility if I was sitting here and I didn't practice it myself. And I would encourage any person I work with, particularly in difficult, challenging situations, to use that toolkit in exactly the same way. Gratitude is it's a very useful tool, and it's definitely considered to be one of the quickest ways of interrupting gloomy thoughts and changing that to, say, a feel-good situation. But it takes effort to do it. And it's easy to do it when things are going well, but when things are going down the toilet, then adopting a position of gratitude is harder to do, but it's very, very good for us. What are the things we have to be grateful for in life? We can do it spontaneously, which is look around. New Zealand is a really, really good place to live. It's a really good place to live. Of all the countries in the world, where would I prefer to live at the moment? This is it. And but in terms of gratitude, as parents, we can be better in this space as well. That gratitude for, say, kids, for instance, if we're going to do it in a more formal way, is adopt formal processes like, well, at the end of the day or around the dinner table or when you're putting them into bed, for instance, what are 3 things you have to be grateful for today? What are those things? And think about that. Think about it seriously and develop good habits in this space. It's shifting the focus away from what we don't have to what we do have. And I'm not talking about having stuff like having a nice car or living in a good house. I'm talking more about other things that are more important, like having good social structure and connection and good family and good friends and social circle and so forth. Experiencing a life where I have a sense of meaning and purpose for what I do, that what I do matters. And experiencing a life where I'm contributing to a greater good. Those sorts of higher ideals. Being grateful helps to trigger those sorts of thoughts. I like to use the analogy of mental fitness as just being very similar, or almost the same as just, say, physical fitness. To be physically fit, we have to train. Now, if I was to go out, and I can't do this now because I struggle to walk, but if I was to go out and, say, run 10 miles, when I'm fit enough to run 10 miles and I can do it uphill, and you can do it for even further, maybe 20 miles, and back in another life I ran a dozen or so marathons, for example. When you can do that and you train yourself to do that, you can withstand lots of things that come your way physically. Like if the hill gets steeper, you can just carry on. Mental fitness is very similar, but getting people to train for mental fitness is something that I've found over the years extremely challenging. That I think it's mostly connected to getting people to see the value in mental fitness, getting them to understand just how important thinking is and how that helps us to run our lives in a better way, and it gives us the toolkit to not just show up, because we do need to show up, but to show up being the best versions of ourselves as well, I know it's cliched, but it actually does matter that. And some days everybody will admit really that some days we're not the best versions of ourselves, but maybe we can be that best version much more frequently than we are without a toolkit like this.